We now have yet another fracking incident that has tainted water. Remember, of course, the situation in West Virginia. We discussed it extensively, where there was a chemical spill that contaminated the water of more than 300,000 homes in West Virginia. And it eventually made its way to the Ohio River, or to Ohio rather, via the Ohio River. And we had a situation where we had water that not only, forget about drinking the water at that time in West Virginia, you weren't even supposed to come in physical contact with your skin with that water, licorice flammable water. Lewis, I hope the audience hasn't forgotten about that situation.
Same here. How could you? That was perhaps one of the most disturbing things we've covered on fracking.
A couple of weeks ago, we told you about how there's a new plan to actually frack beneath the Ohio River. Obviously a boneheaded and absurd idea. We now have news from California. California, we've talked about it. The drought situation in California is the worst in 50 years. We have a very, very real potential here for a true water crisis in California. And what's happening in California with fracking and water? Aquifers that supply drinking water as well as irrigation water for farms. And think about how much of our food is grown in California, have recently had to swallow almost 3 billion gallons of tainted wastewater from hydraulic fracking that's going on nearby. Fracking involves blasting these huge volumes of pressurized water and proprietary chemicals into layers of rock far underground. The oil and the wastewater then come to the surface. The idea is that this wastewater is handled and does not mix in ever with irrigation water used to grow food or with drinking water. But again, Lewis, because of some problems with these wells, and we often hear about these wells as the source of the problem, we now have tainted water, drinking water, and farm irrigation water in California.
And I think that there's probably some regulation around this, but as far as I know, I mean, there's really no regulation at all. And these companies just have free range to do whatever they want, and it's disastrous.
Well, the state's water board has confirmed that several oil companies used at least 9 of 11 injection wells to dispose of these contaminated fracking fluids. They contain pollutants as well as high levels of arsenic, thallium, nitrates. And thallium is a component of rat poison. Arsenic is toxic in and of itself. It can also compromise the immune system. It could potentially cause cancer. We don't need regulation, though, Lewis, because you know what? For-profit companies have an incentive to regulate themselves. They would never allow this to happen if merely we allowed them to have a business environment that was completely free of any oversight or regulation.
Yeah, of course. That's working out just great. This is just when I thought things couldn't get any worse with the drought in California. Now we have this.
And to kind of close the circle with the Ebola situation, where we have to distinguish between risk to ourselves and risk to those in the area and why we should still care. If you're a Californian, you obviously know why this is a huge deal for you. But even if you're not, what about the contaminated water being used to irrigate the produce that you buy, whether you're in New York or Florida or Texas or wherever you are? Even if you only care about stuff when it directly affects you, which sadly is not that uncommon of a situation amongst many people, this directly affects you if you're someone who ever eats food in the United States. And that's most people, Lewis.
Most people do eat food. Honestly, it's unfortunate, but we have to hope that if this water is as toxic as we think it is, that it just kills that produce instead of saturates it and then having that produce being sent out to market.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the effect on growing produce would be. Would it just kill the produce, or would it just contaminate it? And then you have collard greens or whatever it is that comes from California at this point that have been contaminated potentially with thallium and arsenic. We need to be putting all of this money into alternative energy, into renewable energy, not into fracking, not into these dirty forms of energy, so-called clean coal, which is not even a thing. We need to go in a different direction. Twitter.com/dpakman. Follow me on Twitter. We've got a great show planned for you today.